And I'm going to put some music on, and the invitation is to let the music support you to land and arrive and align, and then we will begin.
Kingdoms and whole nations, is this who we are? Is this who you are? Stand up, warrior. Speak for the light. Become the ancestor enthroned with holy right. We are all indigenous to this
Okay, let's take a breath together. That song is by Muriel Kristinai, who is a friend of this work. So big love and appreciation going out to Muriel. Yeah, let's just take a moment to land, just a minute of silence. And the invitation is see if you can feel what happens in your heart and in your body as you're with the possibility of deep political change that's aligned with life. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining. Good to be with you. I know there's a bunch more people who are going to be receiving the recording to this. I think it was because of Gaia. I think Gaia did. I saw Gaia doing all of these posts in like Conscious Community Paris, and what were the other ones like Portugal Transformation, and whatever. Like just Gaia just blitzed the world last night with the link to this event, so that we had like a whole load of people sign up. So welcome to whoever you are, wherever you're from. A bunch of people here that I know already, and yeah, some who have been deeply involved in this work as well. So just thank you for being here. If you don't know me, my name's John Eden Khan. I am the initiator of Majesty, and yeah, what you're joining here is an information event that's dedicated to me trying to help you understand what this thing is, and to feel whether you have some kind of place in it, to feel whether it's something that you want to be connected to, feel whether it's something that you at least want to track in the world as we hopefully continue to grow. So Majesty is the beginnings of a transnational political party and movement that is innovating radically new approaches to politics and leadership and governance aligned with life, aligned with the earth as one, aligned with humanity as one, with all sorts of space for all our differences from there, but starting on that radically different paradigm. So I like to talk about this work as radically sane. Yeah, because even though there might be parts of all of us, as I say those things, that are like, that sounds like a bit of a stretch, John, right? I think if we look outside and we see what's going on in the world, and we see what human beings are up to, and we see the degradation of ecosystems, and we see the resources crises that we collectively face, we see the reality of runaway exponential tech, we see the geopolitical conflicts which are eating away at relationships between peoples, and we see the way that violence and pain and legacies and histories of collective trauma are rippling through the collective human soul at war with itself, then I think it becomes radically sane for us to start to talk about fundamentally different political solutions that are based in fundamentally different first principles. And Majesty is an experiment in what happens when we look at fundamentally different first principles as the basis of governance, leadership, and power. So I'm going to be going into that over the course of this journey that we're going to share. But something I've learned, my friends, something I've learned is that I don't really have a chance of making contact with you unless we do something else first, right? Unless we take a moment to be with actually what politics, just even the word, my friends, even what this word brings up for us. Yeah. Because when I launched this work, some people have heard me talk about this before, I was a bit naive and I didn't remember that actually it took me quite a long time to accept this mission. When this first came and knocked on my inner door, I was like, ooh, like politics, I don't know if I want to get in there, right? This just feels like such a collective toxic slime pool, basically, as far as humanity is operating is concerned. And we all have such, well, yeah, like what I learned when I launched this, being a bit naive, was despite the fact that when I launched it, that naive part of me thought, oh, well, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are like, well, this is obviously a really good idea. How do I get involved? You know? And what happened? Crickets. Crickets happened. And yeah, and then I started to run some stuff around this work with some groups. And I was just talking to people more about it. And I realized that every time the word politics, or even having a conversation about the possibility of fundamental political change that would have us arrive with solutions much more aligned with life, people would just go, something would close and actually walls would go up and something would go cold and something would go hard in people. And I had to learn that that's because we all have a lot of stuff about this topic. So we have to go there first before we can go to the possibility of something else. So we're going to do a super simple, not so long, little exercise. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Cool. So here's what we're going to do. So we're going to go, you're going to be in twos, and the first person who goes, I'm going to ask what comes up in your mind as you connect to the word politics, right? And you're going to have 2 minutes just to share what comes up in your mind, and then the other person's going to share. Then we're going to go back to the first person, and the invitation is going to be, what are the emotions underneath that, right? And so if your stories about politics might be something like a bunch of people out for themselves, career politicians who don't really care about humanity, who want to advance their own power, whatever, and then we go to the feelings level, the feelings level would be like rage or grief or a sense of betrayal or whatever, right? You're going to have 1 minute there because it's not about stories. Then the other person's going to do it. I'm going to guide you from behind the cyber scenes. Don't worry. You'll know what to do, right? And then we're going to go to the level of the body and the invitation, just another minute. What are the physical sensations that happen in your body when you think about politics, right? And then we're going to have one final round, which is, what is the deepest and possibly most vulnerable longing that you have for how politics could look in the world? And then we're going to come back and we're going to go into Majesty. Okay? All right. So like I say, I'll guide you from behind the cyber scenes. You don't have to remember all that. And here we go.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so welcome back, I think, isn't everyone? So, yeah. Did you find when you did that that there's some stuff there? Yeah. Did it feel mucky? Right? Did it feel a bit sludgy, intense, beautiful, liberated, aligned? Yeah, the reason I ask, I mean, just to say, I'm aware that the first time I ran that exercise, I realized I had this kind of like, oh my God moment where I realized, yeah, we could spend a week on that. Right? So it's dynamite, it's explosive, the stuff that tends to live in people's bodies and hearts around politics. Because my observation, I don't know if this accounts exactly for your experience, but my observation is that the reason that people very often, maybe not you folks, maybe you're past this, but the reason why people very often have a tendency to contract and to go cold and something for a wall to come up and for something to shut down when the word politics is mentioned is because underneath the cynicism that exists in a lot of us is rage and grief and a deep sense of betrayal and hugely intense sensations that also happen in our bodies that come from the fact that all of us are managing the ongoing experience of feeling surrounded by constant abuses of power. Right? All of us are managing the ongoing experience of feeling surrounded by constant abuses of power, is my observation, right? So we carry a lot of stuff in us around this topic, and a lot of us are managing, especially people who have some connection to the self-development field, right, and to the sense of the scene of like transformational progressive spirituality. Very often something I learned is that those people are the hardest people to get involved in actual political change, because what has happened for them is that their hearts and their bodies have become so turned off by what they see happening in the political domain that they then have decided, okay, feels like I have no control there, feels like that's not something I can produce change in right now, so I'm going to disconnect from that and I'm going to focus on the things that I can actually control, which is my path, my growth, my healing. Maybe that extends to my community as well, and okay, that's what I can be with. But it simultaneously, and it's understandable, it's really understandable, and it simultaneously involves a fundamental disconnection from this incredibly important domain of our collective life, which, a way I define politics is that politics is how human beings choose to channel power, right? It's how human beings choose to channel power. And that power flows through decision making, it flows through governance processes, it flows through representation and leadership, and how we work stuff out together about how we're going to do this, how we're going to do life together, right? And when we fundamentally disconnect from that domain, that's a tough space to be in for ourselves, and it's a tough situation for that domain. So a big part of this work is how do we how do we change our relationship to politics and leadership and governance? How do we experiment with going through the portal of the courage and the vulnerability required to actually come close again and to feel actually where we have a role, and that can be that one's role is to be involved in some way in something like Majesty, or it can just be like recognizing yourself as a political being. We're all political beings. What I do with my power and my choice and my place in my community and the wider world I'm a part of is political. There's no way around that. So let's get into Majesty. So my intention with this is to give you a bit of a breakdown on what Majesty is, the principles that are at the basis of Majesty, where we are at present, and the plan for the work going forward. So as I said before, Majesty is based on how can we do politics and leadership and governance from fundamentally different first principles. So I want to give you a sense of the principles that are at the heart of this work. This is what we're orbiting around. This is the exploration we're in around how can we build something fundamentally different that is based on these principles I'm about to name. So the first one, I'm an evangelical for this, right? A worldview that is based on a fundamentally different relationship to life, right? So a worldview based on the one source that all traditions, all mystical traditions, the hearts of all mystical traditions through time have told us is the true nature of reality. So we had a members session the other day where some people who were on that members session will remember that I got really jazzed up about this, right? So I'm passionate, my friends, about the fact that we don't have to have a worldview that is anchored in the idea that either you're religious and you believe that there's some kind of emotionally unstable God who has an awkward relationship with humanity, or you're an atheist and it's just nothing, right? Those are not the only two options that are here, right? Actually, there's human beings who for millennia across cultures, millennia, my friends, across cultures, have done deep contemplative, meditative practice over years, who have opened themselves to the true nature of what life is, of what reality is, and who have come back with the same data, who've come back with the same realization again and again and again and again. And that data is that reality is fundamentally good, that life is unimaginably good at the essence level, and that's who we are, and that's what this is, and it is indivisibly one. It has no beginning, it has no end, it is the basis of everything, and we can choose to align ourselves with it or not, right? And the freedom of our choice is part of its blessing. And we can call that Allah, we can call that God, we can call that consciousness, we can call that Brahman, we can call that Param Shiva, we can call it Buddha nature, we can call it whatever we want to call it, right? But human beings through time, across cultures, who've done the work, have come back with that realization that the true nature of reality and the true nature of this life are fundamentally, unspeakably good. Yeah, and that's the true nature of what we are. Page 1. So first principle of Majesty. Second principle of Majesty, starting with the earth as one. Right? Now you and I have enough data around what we see on our news reports from endless international conferences that come together to discuss things like climate change or other interconnected issues that humanity collectively faces, where we have representatives of different nations showing up to represent the self-interests of their nation or their national bloc, and where does it go? Does that shit get actually sorted out? No. We have an endless cycle of conferences that, and just as far as my life is concerned, I remember the first time I was politically aware about a global warming crisis happening when I was 14 or something. There's been virtually no headway made on that topic and I'm 43 now, right? That paradigm does not work. So we need a fundamentally different paradigm that doesn't start with national self-interest or the self-interest of continental blocks, but that starts with the earth as one. We start with the earth as one. And that has space for difference, right? That has space for nations. It has space for cultures. It has space for people to think different things. It has space for different ethnic groups. It has space for individuals. But if we start with separation and try and get to the whole, we have ample evidence it does not work. We have ample evidence we never get there. We have ample evidence that even on a good day, in some political conference somewhere, there's a sense of maybe we can start to think about the whole, and then people start arguing, they start bickering about their various little national self-interest things, and the whole thing falls apart. Does not work. Second principle of Majesty, we start with the earth as one. And critical in that, humanity's place within that one. What is humanity's purpose? What is humanity's purpose within the wider living system of the earth? Because we have a role to play. If we start with the earth as one, then humanity has a role to play in that, right? This whole thing is not just about human beings as some adolescent royalty on this planet that we can do with it what we want, you know, that actually the natural kingdoms are just ours for the pillaging and the raping and the taking, and actually let's just more oil, more lumber, more oil, more lumber, slash and burn, slash and burn, slash and burn, right? That is not an intelligent way for us to conduct ourselves, let alone a loving way or a purposeful way. We're part of something extraordinary. That's a key piece of what Majesty is based on as well, which is that we are part of something extraordinary. We're part of an extraordinary life here, an extraordinary planet, an extraordinary single living system, and we have a role to play. So second principle of Majesty, starting with the earth as one, and what is our collective purpose within that one? Right? Third principle, leadership. Leadership based on shared collective responsibility. That we need a fundamentally different paradigm of leadership. We need an approach to leadership which understands that we need to grow our leaders and recognize our leaders by those who are willing and feel the call and who accept taking responsibility for the whole. Leadership cannot be based on just endless material wealth accumulation or endless tech innovation. We need to grow up, right? We need to grow up and collectively face and hold ourselves accountable for the reality that that is child's play. Like to believe that that's what leadership, mature leadership actually looks like, or even just, you know, very intelligent, technocratic political leadership, better. But actually, we need leaders who are recognized and who are supported as those taking responsibility to serve the health, the needs, and the flourishing of the whole. That needs to be the paradigm of leadership that we're relating to. Next principle, realigning human systems with life. Realigning human systems with life. Our systems right now, so many of them, if we're honest, are anti-life. And they're anti-life and they're anti-love, right? We need agricultural systems aligned with life. We need education systems that see and call forth and celebrate the life in our children before trying to shape them into economic drones. Like, we need social systems, healthcare systems, a relationship to technology and innovation that prioritizes alignment with life, not just endless churning out of products for the sake of making sure the economic system ticks along. No, the realigning of human systems with life. Next principle of Majesty. Political process based on coherence rather than tribalism. Political process based on coherence rather than tribalism. Endless tribal arguments are not necessary. Right? To be fair to where we've gotten, it is a massive evolutionary step forward for humanity that we have arrived at a point where we have a representative, at least in the quote unquote Western world, and some other parts of, I guess you wouldn't call it exactly technically the Western world, but where there are representative democracies, that's a major leap forward from pathological monarchies or pathological oligarchies, right? It's a major leap forward that we have the relative level of choice and the freedoms that we do. The fact that you and I can gather on this call and we can talk about these things without any fear of any of us being imprisoned is an incredibly special thing. And human beings over generations have fought and served and given their lives so that we have the freedoms that we do to just be here with each other. That needs to be honored. And the political system based on these people over here taking this side and these people over there taking this side, and just endless battles, endless tribal battles and polarized battles over the major, most charged topics of our collective life is not a viable solution to our collective pathway forward. It does not work. No one ever wins, really. Right? Even though people believe they win and fight to win for the next political cycle of the next 4 years, no one ever really fully truly wins. And the truth is, there comes a time in human growth where we realize we don't actually need to do it that way. Yeah, there are other options. There's ways that we can grow together, that I can learn from you and you can learn from me, and we can see if we can find what is the space of truth and what's aligned with life between us. Yeah, where polarization can actually move into polarity, which is generative of life rather than draining of it. Yeah, so there's ways that we can do political process based on coherence rather than tribalism. Last principle, that all politics, leadership, and governance must work on the commitment to the service, being in service of all domains of life across all generations. Being in service of life in all domains across all generations. That means in service of life in the plant kingdom, in service of life in the animal kingdom, in service of life in humanity, and also being in service of life across generations. Yeah, that we're not just stuck in people trying to reap the rewards of their flashy economic deals in the next 5 years. What was it? Trump, the big thing in the news at the moment is that Trump just recently disclosed that in the last year, he has profits of $1 billion in the last year, right? So I don't know, but I venture to imagine that probably that billion does not come from being in service to all domains of life across all generations. Yeah. So those are the principles that guide our work. One source, the one source. And I'm not imposing that on anyone. I'm not saying that anyone has to believe in one source. Human beings across generations and across times have been coming back and saying that's the reality and it's unspeakably good and it's the basis of everything, right? Let's start there. Let's take them at their word. Let's work on the basis that actually, if any of us do that experiment, we'll probably get the same answer. Good, let's do something with that, right? One source, one earth. What's humanity's place in that? Leadership based on what it means to take responsibility for the whole, realigning human systems with life, political process based on coherence rather than tribalism, governance, leadership, and power based on a commitment to be in service of all generations and all domains of life. So that's where we start. Those are the principles of what Majesty is based on. So my invitation for you just for a moment is just feel how that's different. Okay. So I want to tell you where we are right now, and then the basically the plan for this work going forward. So maybe it's helpful that I give a sense of like what the kind of plan and purpose of this work is, right? What are we actually working towards? So as I said, Majesty is an emerging transnational political party and movement. When the idea for a transnational political party landed for me, I had no idea what that meant. Like I was like, I, it actually happened for me in a dream, and I woke up the next morning, and I felt, well, that felt like a really clear piece of guidance, and I have no idea what to do with that. because because I have no idea, like, what is even the point of a transnational political party? Our political processes work within nations. What's the point of a transnational political party, right? And so I just sat with it. I kind of put it on the shelf in my inner world and trusted, okay, if life wants me to understand what that's about more, life will help me understand what that's about. And it took some years, but then it really broke through. And there was a whole bunch of inspiration that came. And one of the things I got was that, oh, actually, that's how you potentially have world changing political movements. Because imagine the possibility that there's Majesty Peru, or there's Majesty Deutschland, or there's Majesty South Africa, or there's Majesty Australia, or there's Majesty Nigeria, or there's Majesty Japan, or whatever. And that we actually get to a point that we have representatives who are showing up in the political process of their local areas, their regions, their bioregions, even their nations. But my friends, what they're representing is not just the tribal, ethnocentric, economic, social, political positions of their particular political tribe. What they're representing is the health, the needs, and the flourishing of the earth as one in their particular area. Imagine that. Imagine if we started to have political representatives showing up, and what they're standing for is the health, the needs, and the flourishing of the earth as one, and humanity's place in it, applied to Osaka, Japan, and how they do economics there, or how they do their social systems there, or Lima, Peru, and how they work out their infrastructural issues there. Yeah. Or any other place, that we start to have representatives of the whole operating locally and nationally. So that's the goal, right? The goal is, can we grow this movement to a point where we start to have Majesty parties with Majesty representatives in different nations representing the health, the needs, and the flourishing of the whole in those areas. Now, there's all sorts of conversations that we could have about how much, for that to happen. That's like, we're talking about, I've I'm in this for like a 25-year thing, right? So we'll see how long that takes, right? Maybe we could be there in 10 years, maybe less. But the world is changing radically. And something I'm aware of is that just even in the last year and a half, with everything going on, with the wars happening, with the level of social breakdown happening, level of economic instability, with the level of social upheaval and political polarization, work like this makes more sense to more people every single day. Right? I've noticed the number of people who take this work seriously, it grows by the day, given what's happening in the world. And something that I was really sensing prior to launching this work was that even if this goes nowhere, even if Majesty goes nowhere, we are in a time which is demanding the emergence of new political movements, parties, and structures that are global, right? Because we're facing collective, interconnected, massive global issues, and the paradigms and the structures and the institutions that we have are not fit for purpose to navigate those scales of issues. And Richard, who is here with us, something that Richard did that was when we did one of our members retreats, I think it was 2 years ago or something, just before we started, Richard sent me an email, and that email was the announcement of the launch of another transnational political party called Atlas. So you can look that up if you want. Look up Atlas. I think they call themselves Atlas Global Politics, right? This is happening. Whatever happens with Majesty, transnational political parties and movements are rising. This is a thing. This is going to become more of a thing because of exactly what I said. We're in a time where we're facing global, interconnected problems that are demanding the emergence of a global, interconnected humanity that can manage global, interconnected governance, leadership, and politics. There's no way around it. That's the reality we're collectively facing, right? And that has space for all of us to have our local community lives and so on, but we're being asked to grow into a different kind of human. And Majesty is part of that. So where we are right now. So welcome to the ground floor. This is this is an emergent early stage involvement opportunity that you're in. We have a global community, a global membership community of about 150 people, and that spans from Lagos, Nigeria, to Colombia, to Brazil, to New Zealand, to Australia, to the US, to Europe, to Russia, to Italy, we to South Africa. We have a range of policy circles and national cells. So we have policy circles that are small groups of dedicated people who have a deep passion for particular areas. The one that was most recently activated was a policy circle dedicated to healthy sex, intimacy, and relationships, because, hey, that's really important today, right, with everything going on. So, but we also have policy circles related to AI and transhumanism, to healthcare, to education, to exopolitics. That's cool, huh? You know what exopolitics is? Exopolitics is how do we collectively, politically navigate the reality that we're not alone in the universe and that other intelligences might be showing up? What are the political implications for that? What do we do now? Right, so that's exopolitics. What else do we have? We have decolonization. We have healing collective trauma. So we've got a range of these policy circles, and the focus of those policy circles is basically generating wisdom and insights around how humanity can navigate those areas in fundamentally different ways, that when we later have Majesty representatives showing up in different countries, they can draw on those recommendations to support their policy creation around education, healthcare, AI, whatever, right? We also have a bunch of national cells. I think we have about, let's say, I'm going to guess around 13 national cells right now. So those are groups of people with a sense of connection to this work, and that extends across. I think we have Italy, we have Nigeria, we have England, we have Germany, we have Australia, we have the USA. We have a range of others. So there's the possibility of connecting to those national cells. It's going to be part of the next phase of the work is to reactivate those national cells more. And what I'm doing at the moment, and here's where for me I feel the most pressing immediate edge of this work is concerned: leadership, right? So something that I'm doing right now is developing the Majesty leadership development pathway so that we can grow the leaders that this work really needs, right? So as I said before, this work is asking for a fundamentally different paradigm of leadership. And it's leadership that's based on us having standards and requirements for our leaders, that they don't stand in positions of leadership unless they've been through rigorous processes of purpose work, soul work, shadow work, trauma work, masculine feminine integration, erotic integration, that they're not just highly skilled or have professional experience in their particular areas of expertise, that there's not just, my friends, oh my God, this drives me crazy, right? But the current paradigm of what it takes to become a political leader is basically that you've had a successful business. That's basically what it is. That's wrong. It's really wrong. And that's why there's no requirements like that. I have friends in the leadership development world. I do leadership development, and it's known in the leadership development world that there's one domain of our collective human life where just the argument of why leadership development is important hasn't really landed yet. Guess what domain it is? It's the political domain. How freaking crazy is that? How freaking crazy is it that the political domain, which is where human beings, the human beings who make some of the most important decisions in representation of our collective life, and where we entrust essentially some of the greatest power over our collective life to them, is actually the domain which has invested least time, energy, and money in deeply maturing the leaders involved. That's a problem, right? So we must stand in this work for a fundamentally different paradigm of leadership. And that leadership needs to involve the kinds of deep level work that I've just spoken to, based in a commitment and an accepted responsibility to serve the health of the whole. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I need help, right? We need help in this work. And to be clear, I do not know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. None of us have ever done this before. We don't know what we're doing. We're finding our way. And there are, there is stuff which is clear, and where we have a clear sense of direction in some regards, and a sense of what needs to happen when. But none of us have ever done anything like this before. So, yeah, part of my invitation for your sensing as you're hearing the things that I'm saying is there a place in you that feels like you want to stay connected to this work? There's ways to do that. Is there a place in you that might want to become part of our membership community, where we have ongoing explorations into what it means to hold a culture of the kind of things that I've been speaking to as the basis for a different kind of political movement? Is there a part of you which feels called to feel like, is there a place or is there a role for me to take in holding this together? Because this work requires us to hold it together, whichever place that we stand. So those are some things. Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, maybe the last thing I'd share, and then I would like to invite us into another sharing, is actually no, I won't go there right now. Yeah, okay, well, the way I see where we are right now in this work is it's about movement building, right? So we want to get to a place where we have national Majesty parties in different nations, and where we have Majesty representatives. And to get there, that it requires movement building, and we're very much in the movement building phase. I'm aware, as I say the whole thing about political parties, there might be places in you that are like, ew, why do you have to make it a party? Like, why did they make it a party? That happens, that comes up a bunch sometimes. They're like, why not make it a political movement? John, why is it not a political movement? I'll speak straight to that, because political movements don't really have much power. Because actually, I think they can pressure change for sure. Maybe that's not fair to say they don't have much power. That's not fair. But they don't have the power to actually participate in political change from the inside. Parties do, right? And just my own sense of what this asks to be is that the fact it's a party or it's moving towards becoming a party. We're in the process of incorporation right now. Is a stand for something. Like it's a stand for it being possible for fundamentally different first principles to be the basis of what we're trying to do. That the political system, with the that we can show up and take a stand for something fundamentally different in the political system. And it's important to not be naive about that, right? Because and I know that the political system is mucky. And there was a woman who I had a conversation with when I first launched this work, and she had been involved in the co-founding of two pan-European political movements. And she said to me, John, you have to understand that if you have, and she was very sweet, very polite in the way that she put it, but she said, if you have very well-meaning and idealistic progressive people who start volunteering for your thing, and I meant, do you mean hippies, like spiritual hippies? And she was like, yeah, that's what I mean. Right? Like, she was like, if you have such people start to volunteer and participate in this work, they won't hang around long. And I said, okay. I thought I got what she meant, but I wanted to really ask her. I wanted to get the answer. So I said, why? Can you tell me why? And she said, because they'll realize after not so long how toxic this space is. And I said, okay, can you tell me more? Like, tell me more about what you mean. And she told me like what she had endured just in being someone who was part of co-founding two pan-European political parties. She told me how in Germany, for instance, the tax system is set up to basically just protect the three or four main political parties, right? And it's very difficult for other parties to actually make a difference or make a dent. But not just that, how those main parties have lawyers working for them 24/7, where if you start to gain some traction, if you're alternative political movement and you start to gain some traction, they will go through everything that they will go through your entire social media digital footprint to try and find something to discredit you. They will go and speak to your lovers and former girlfriends or boyfriends at school to find out shit that you did that was off to try and discredit you. They will dig to take you down, right? That's the thing that is the case right now, right? And so it's important not to be naive about that. On the other side, we're in a time of unprecedented political change. We're in a time where we can collectively feel like something is breaking down. And there are cracks in the current system that I perceive that light is starting to shine through in a way that has never happened in any of our lifetimes. And I work on the principle, like I look at Trump, for instance, and I think Trump is a really good example of the fact that human beings desperately are longing for authenticity. Now, I'm not making a case for Trump being an embodiment of authenticity. I think Trump is brazen and I think he's unfiltered, but I think people want what's real. I think people deeply want what's real. I think people are done with, thank you, Larissa. I think people are done with career politicians playing the political game of saying the right thing at the right time in the right suit. Yeah. So things are changing. And the way I think about this work is like, let's be honest, right? I don't know the outcome of this mission. You don't know the outcome of this mission. But what better thing? Like I mean, there's out of the things that we could dedicate our time to. I have a son. I have a son who's just about to turn 7. I care about the world he inherits. Some of you will have kids, or people you love have kids. We have responsibility for the world that we pass on. So what more? Whether it's this or whether it's other things, let's do the things that matter most. To be able to pass on to our children or the children that we love a world that, where we've collectively taken the next step or the next steps forward to align life with life. So let's take a breath. So I want to ask you now, I'd love to just ask you, we're in a time of unprecedented and rapid technological, ecological, political, and social change. But something, in my news feed, in my social media feed, I see updates about that a lot. The next AI thing, the next business thing, the next space and tech thing, like blah, 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 blah. But what I don't see is the next human development thing. What what are the kind of humans that this time is asking us to grow into? So just here together, just a sharing, just over the next few minutes, as you feel the changes happening in the world, what is the type of human being these times are asking us to grow into? Just take a moment to feel. And the space is open.
Yeah, I can start. The word harmony comes up in an exploration recently with Lauren, actually. And it's a shift from the false harmony of the absence of friction and conflict to harmony being the beauty of a collective sound that is made in with multiple instruments playing at the same time in their own true voice. And my very physical experience of that today, that's why I also entered late, is to not back down when you feel something is true out of fear of this collaboration, this example is gonna blow up in my face or whatever it is. But to be able to build the capacity to stay and not necessarily create a gray mush between the polarities, but to create a beautiful interplay between different qualities that create something new, a tone of harmony through the combination of differences.
Thank you for the question, John. Um, I'm feeling this really deeply because this is a question that I've been sitting for a while. And as a trained lawyer, I know that our Constitution is based on the Hobbesian view of humanity, of being in chaos and in constant war with each other. And so I think that it is time for us to change that, to change the how we see us as ourselves as humans, and the view that I have on humanity is uh, something that is developed, nurtured, embraced, in the arms of this earth, in the arms of this community of planetary life. And I see humanity opening up to the embodiment of the senses, to feel, to know through the embodiment that what I do for myself, I do for all the others, and to sense the web of life that each of us affect with our being, and to take responsibility to make sure that the well-being and the flourishing and the abundance is there for everyone.
And my sense is that what we are going through as a collective, as a species, is forcing us to be able to go through the murk, to be able to go through the darkest places of our being, and to be able to build capacity to stay with that, so that, and to be able to, as we learn in our personal development, have to titrate between going into the depth of our emotions and coming back into stability. I feel something like that is happening on a collective level, where we are just witnessing daily the global disaster of our impact, the disastrous impact globally of our species. And in some ways, this is the stage where we are at. We growing the capacity to be able to be with that, so that we learn to also titrate and to grow stronger, to grow more grounded, to grow more embodied, so that we can evolve from where we are at.
For me, what came in terms of, it's a question of maturity, like when you ask like what is asked for us now, I feel like if we gather together is that we see something which is missing or which is not correct. And as we can see it, we are conscious of it. And so we have a responsibility to go deeper with that and to do something with it and to spread it around and to connect with others who see the same. So it's a question of like taking responsibility for what we see and feel.
Thank you for a good question. There was something in the question that created some friction in me. Like it's about like human beings, and there is a resistance in me for the plural there. I think for me it goes from the internal, like first step is like defragmenting ourselves and create like internal unity, like less resistance. And then from that, like the lack of fragmentation between my narratives and the different parts of myself also allows for no fragmentation between the me and others, and then we don't need to know where we as humans must be, but it's where are we as humanity defragmented, I think is important. And I think that what I've heard is already pointing a lot to that unity. Thank you.
Is there one more? Brittany,
Yeah. It was someone else. Okay. My speaker's a bit messed up, so if someone else said this, I don't think so, but yeah, what really is here for me is sacrifice, and just recognizing as humans the world that we've created is one not for everyone, but for a lot of us focused on comfort and just like prioritizing being comfortable. And where we're moving towards needs to sacrifice the comforts to, like, as I heard, really see the responsibility that we have to show up for and to stand in that. Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, I wanted to bring to light the theme of the integration of dark and light and the esoteric dimension of the leadership challenge. And I just recently read, Chiara, your piece in Substack about that, and the fact that ever since the Epstein files came to light, I became much, much more aware of the salience of what often called occult practices and dark energies and so forth in bringing and sustaining nefarious power structures in this world and across multiple generations, and most definitely up to the present moment. And I hitherto just sort of ignored that whole world of what some people call conspiracy theorizing and all the rest. And I feel like, particularly on the retreats, John, in the Avatar world, as well as in books like Bruce's Dark Divinity, there's a much more holistic view of why these dark powers are so important and active and salient, and that possibly the most unique aspect of of Majesty, is that there is a spiritual component to it that's it's less explicit probably in the Majesty documents than certainly in the Avatar work, but it really calls forward people to be in touch with the full range of earth and cosmic energies and recognize the human as a transformer of all of that, and not to exclude and be only on the ascension path and the traditional sort of light worker path, if you will. And the way this shows up in politics, as you know, and what I'm impressed by and why I'm actually super enthusiastic about the possibilities over the next few years, and I literally mean few, like 3 to 5, not 10 to 20, is that I've seen just how far and fast and deep and wide some of these political movements have traveled through a combination of elite activation and, frankly, skillful propaganda, using traditional, propaganda techniques that were perfected, in the 30s, basically 20s and 30s, and work like a charm every time. And of course, they've been algorithmically, further refined. But the core ideas of the algo that, what the algos are working on is core concepts of propaganda. And I think we have to talk about propaganda. I think we have to talk about how quickly people's minds are shifted. And that has been typically the domain of what I think most of us would agree are regressive forces. And so my idea for just an overall political orientation is what I would call a middle up down strategy. So the up is is elite activation and elite clarity on vision and strategy and tactics, which the right has been vastly more effective in that than the left. And I speak from a US context, but if you consider neoliberalism to be a phenomenon of the right and the center right, it's global, it's fully global. And it's extremely, the control mechanism of it is extremely narrow and extremely top down, but it has adopted propaganda techniques that are incredibly effective with the mass, including populist mass. I'll be done in a minute. And so where the middle is probably the 50% that are checked out, right? Literally, they're not voting, they're not active, they're not informed. And where the bottom of this pyramid is, and I propose that we invert the pyramid, is that there are people that care who are, in that 1/3. Typically, politics can divide 1/3. 1/3 are progressive, 1/3 are in the middle and can be swayed on either side. 1/3 are in a sort of a regressive state, and then half are kind of checked out that are spread across those the bottom 2/3. And but all of that can be shifted through messaging, skillful messaging by those who understand, have a strategy and a vision and for how to get from here to there. So, I think Majesty has to embrace the reality of power as it's been constructed and really take note of how elite networks have functioned and then build from that point of view and really acknowledge that there is a role for esoteric and leadership structures, elite leadership structures, that these have been effective, and then they plug into more mass-based sort of political party type power with a clear vision of how leadership can be exercised in a world where algorithms rule and media is the name of the game. So I think I'm just like increasingly attentive to how neoliberal forces have harnessed occult dark forces, harnessed mass media and algorithmic capabilities to produce the results that we're living in today. And unless we acknowledge how that has occurred and how we can take what is useful from that from a strategic perspective, I think we're kind of swimming upstream because we don't have a theory of action that is an impact that is viable without really recognizing the historical reality of that integration of the dark with propaganda technique for and I don't mean propaganda in an inherently evil sense. I mean it more in the sense of just how minds are changed and communications are reproduced.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Okay, folks. Thank you. Thank you for attending this. I'm gonna. I feel like I've learned a bunch of stuff during this time, so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to learn with you. I'm going to send an email out that's going to contain ways that you can stay connected or connect deeper to this work if you wish to. So that includes things like becoming a Majesty member, which is free, although donations are very welcome. It involves the possibility of having some kind of role with one of our policy circles or national cells, or potentially some deeper role. I'm going to make sure that I send out the link to the white paper as well, where basically the vision for this work in detail is explored. Yeah, and if you have questions about this or things that you want to bring in, or and ways that you can stay connected to like our social media and the stuff that we put out in the world, Substack and things like that, that will all be included. And if there's ways that you want to be connected to this that I haven't spoken to, or any questions, then I really invite you to contact me. We need help with this. This needs help. This requires and invites collective human responsibility, stepping up to the adventure of trying to build something radically different in a world that probably isn't quite ready for it yet, but actually, hey, what is more important, So thank you for coming and just being in the possibility of this. And I'd love to stay connected with you if you feel a sense of connection to what this is. All right. Much love, and I'll be in touch with all the resources and so on by email. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.